Hello and welcome. You're watching UATV News with me, Ksenia Buhai. Let's start with the latest developments in Ukraine over the past week. Ukraine registered the highest number of new cases and deaths from COVID-19 since the beginning of the pandemic. Over the past day, 19,893 cases of coronavirus infection were detected. 433 Ukrainians died of complications. At the same time, a little more than 10,000 people overcame the disease. Most of all new cases are in Lviv and Odessa regions. More than 1,600 of infected in each of the regions. 1,494 new cases in the Kharkiv region. Ukraine's Minister of Health also states the complicated situation with oxygen supply in the capital.
Щодо заповненості ліжок з киснем.
As for beds with oxygen in the capital, almost 84% of them are occupied. This is the highest number in the country. The tense situation is also observed in Lviv region, more than 71%, in Zhytomyr region, almost 71%, in Mykolaiv, more than 70%. These are the highest rates in the country.
Due to the difficult situation, starting Monday, April 5th, Kyiv is strengthening quarantine restrictions. Head of the Kyiv City State Administration, Vitaly Klitschko, said that measures were taken to reduce the rate of spread of COVID-19. In particular, educational institutions are being closed and a special regime in city transport will be introduced.
З понеділка, 5 квітня,
Starting Monday, April 5, all schools and kindergartens will be closed. Passengers will be required to have a special pass to use public transport, both surface and underground. That is, all means of public transportation will only carry employees of enterprises of critical infrastructure. Heads of institutions and enterprises have to send their employees work remotely.
France and Germany called on Russia to cease fire in Donbass. On Wednesday, Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel held a video conference with Vladimir Putin. Later, the Elysee Palace said that Moscow should recognize responsibility for what is happening in the temporarily occupied Donbass. Berlin called for a meeting in the Normandy format in order to implement the Minsk Accords. Besides, Moscow was obliged to take responsibility for escalating the armed conflict. In Kyiv, officials insist that not a single decision concerning Ukraine can be made without its participation. Of course, the issue of warfare in eastern Ukraine was discussed. Today, the conflict in Donbass is the only military conflict waged in Europe. It would be very strange if leaders of Germany and France did not mention this war at all in their conversation with Russia.
Естественно, что эта позиция не меняется.
This position does not change, as well as the fact that the Russian regular armed forces are stationed on the territory of Ukraine. In particular, the OSCE monitoring mission provided images from an unmanned aerial vehicles which show that the latest Russian equipment is present in the Donbass. In particular, the means of electronic warfare. They were not exported.
Safe sowing, Sappers are actively demining agricultural fields of Luhansk region in eastern Ukraine. Mines on almost 190 hectares of land were neutralized. Soon the farmers will start sowing crops there in the safe areas. Our correspondent will tell you more.
A couple of minutes and the sapper picks up an old rusty thing from the ground. Just some old metal junk.
25th, are you here?
I hear you.
An explosive object revealed.
Roger that. Start removing the object.
We found an explosive object VOG-17, explosive fragmentation grenade. This is a dangerous weapon. Its impact area makes from 6 to 8 meters.
This is how sappers are cleaning agricultural fields in the Luhansk region from mines. Meter by meter, since the beginning of the year, they have already cleared nearly 190 hectares of fields and destroyed 19,000 shells. They work according to the special plan of the Joint Forces Operation Headquarters and also fulfill the requests of farmers.
First, an application is submitted to the regional state administration. The regional administration submits it to the Joint Forces Operation Headquarters. The headquarters to us, and then we work. We search for the explosive objects in the area which will come under crops, like this farmland near the town of Hirske. Area of this territory is about 127 hectares. It is almost clear of mines, only 5 hectares remain.
Sappers work all year round. All the shells found will be taken to a special landfill and destroyed.
Those are very dangerous finds, and it is very important to avoid touching, disassembling, transferring them. It is necessary to always call specialists.
Almost 50 sappers are working in fields in different areas of Luhansk region of Ukraine. Now they are working near the Siversky Donets River in Chester town and examine the territory near the water canal in Zolote. Reported by Volodymyr and Anastasia Volkova, UATV News.
On Friday, President of the United States of America called his Ukrainian colleague. Joe Biden reassured Volodymyr Zelenskyy in the U.S. support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity in the face of ongoing Russian aggression and emphasized U.S. administration's commitment to revitalize strategic partnership of Ukraine and the U.S. The State Border Guard Service of Ukraine has changed the entry regulations. All the amendments are linked to the pandemic restrictions. Our correspondents have studied the new rules and have a report for you.
According to the State Border Service, the entry regulations have been changed for certain groups of population. The new rules are applied to not only those returning from the temporarily occupied territories. They've been also introduced for foreigners and for all citizens of Ukraine who return to the country. From now on, in addition to the insurance policy, foreign citizens are required to have a negative PCR test result, made no earlier than 3 days before entry. However, truckers and several groups of population are exempted from this. Representatives of diplomatic missions and institutions are exempted from those compulsory measures, as well as children under 12, in case there is no suspicion that they have come into contact with anyone having COVID. In turn, residents of the territories temporarily uncontrolled by Kyiv will need to install the DIA State Services application and self-isolate until the PCR test results are ready. It can be taken free of charge at all the checkpoints. It's great that it is free, especially for those with low incomes.
It is quick. Well, just a minute. They wrote something down, stuck a stick into my nose, and that's it.
However, there are people who don't need to self-isolate, for instance those who are going to get vaccinated. Citizens under 12, representatives of international organizations, applicants who intend to enter universities that are in the Kyiv-controlled territory, students who are already studying in such institutions, as well as one of their parents, are not required to undergo observation or self-isolate. The service also explains the residents of the separate districts of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions who were forced to enter Ukraine through the territory of Russia should notify the border service about this in advance. In this case, the court may not fine those who arrived home, although the protocol in violation of the border crossing rules will be drawn up, as according to the Code of Administrative Offenses, such border crossing is illegal. As the Eastern Human Rights Group reports, 170 protocols under the relevant article have been drawn up daily over the past month. The maximum fine makes up to $180. Reported by Volodymyr and Danilo Kobza, UATV News.
Tax amnesty, financial aid for entrepreneurs in the red quarantine zone, and large privatizations unblocked. On Tuesday, Ukrainian MPs voted for the presidential initiatives to support small and medium businesses. Our correspondent will tell you more.
8,000 Ukrainian hryvnias, or some $280 of financial assistance. The state is ready to pay this sum of money to entrepreneurs and their employees who suffered from toughened quarantine restrictions. One can apply for the state support via the DIA State Services application. 312 votes, decision approved. Moreover, according to the law, during the third wave of the pandemic, entrepreneurs will get assistance from the state as well as from local budgets.
The second source of financing is funds from local budgets and the amount which is established by the relevant decision of a local council, and to pay this sum from the local budget.
This means that the amount of payments to entrepreneurs will grow by at least a half, Oleg Ustenko, advisor to the president of Ukraine, says. There are expectations related to the fact that at least this sum can be increased by 50% at the expense of local budgets. This means that the entrepreneurs will be able to get not only $280, but in fact $430. Well, if the capabilities of a local budget are so significant as, for example, in Kyiv, then the entrepreneurs would get an opportunity to get an additional 100% payment. Besides, the MPs have also taken the first step towards tax amnesty. They've supported the presidential bill on the introduction of a zero declaration for everyone who wants to legitimize the assets earned illegally. The bill would provide an opportunity to legalize the money earned illegally, withdraw it from shadow and make this money work. And indeed, this tax amnesty is a voluntary thing. In order to legalize shadow property and assets, one will have to submit a declaration once throughout the year, starting from July the 1st. In this case, cash should be deposited into a bank account or transferred into securities. The amnesty will not affect former officials or politicians who have filed tax returns since 2005. 257 votes, the law is approved as a whole. Having approved another bill, the parliament unblocked the large privatization process, which was stopped due to the coronavirus pandemic. Large enterprises that are not of strategic importance and which have already been prepared for auctions by the State Property Fund will be listed for sale. Thus, the state will be able to receive additional $430 million to the budget and create new working places. Reported by Vadim Kramer, Valery Bakus and Yulia Kruchkova, UATV News.
Online courts will start working in Ukraine. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development is launching a pilot project to create online courts. Ukraine will be among the first. The EBRD wants to study the experience of employing such a system, and in the future it plans to launch online courts in the countries of the Western Balkans, Eastern Europe, the Caucasus and Central Asia. Will it help to modernize the judicial system of Ukraine and speed up the consideration of cases? Our correspondent has studied the issue.
Ukraine lacks 2,000 judges, and those working cannot cope with the influx of cases. The work of the judicial system is hampered. Some cases are pending for several months. Launching of online courts will help with this situation, experts say.
Everything that contributes to the fact that people resolve their controversial issues without loading the judicial system, all these for the benefit of people themselves. After all, any litigation spends time and resources, including financial.
In order to take part in the meeting, one won't need to be present in the courtroom. In addition, in order to submit documents, contact a court officer or request the necessary papers, one can do all this via the internet. Online courts should save Ukrainians from paperwork.
Definitely, this is a positive and productive initiative that will have a positive impact on access to justice. Starting from submission of documents online, the opportunity to participate in the court sessions without leaving home, and receiving the court ruling on any other necessary information online as well, I see only positive aspects in this.
According to the World Bank, legal costs and delays in a small commercial dispute in Ukraine can take up to half the cost of a claim. It is simply unprofitable for entrepreneurs to address to Ukrainian justice. A project by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development will help eliminate this problem. But still, Ukrainians don't have a consensus upon whether online courts are needed.
I think this is inappropriate. Online courts are perhaps nonsense. Courts must be face-to-face. You have to see who is being tried. Be present on spot, but not on TV or computer.
It would be very convenient, I think, to apply online. The main thing is that it all works and functions. It often happens so like you apply it online, and then it is still necessary to write some papers by hand or bring some other papers.
The project will initially work in Kyiv for cases ranging from 5,000 to 10,000 euros. It will be possible to file a claim, participate in a meeting and receive a court ruling remotely, which is a big plus during pandemic. Online courts are already operating in the UK, US and Canada. Reported by Vadim Kromer and Artem Holub, UATV News.
A chance for life. A year ago, the first bone marrow transplantation from unrelated donor was carried out in Ukraine. 3 more are planned to be performed in April. Our correspondent knows details.
This video is over a year old. Little Nazar was diagnosed with immune deficiency, and the only chance for life was a bone marrow transplantation.
Of course, it's hard for him to stay in a single room. 4 walls, everything is banned. Well, it's the age when a child explores everything.
Soon they've managed to find a donor for the boy in Germany, and during the pandemic the material was transported to Ukraine. And on April 1st, 2020, they've made the first bone marrow transplantation from an unrelated donor in the country. The complicated operation lasted about 6 hours under the guidance of a hematologist, Alexander Lysitsa. That was a great responsibility for the life of a child, this is firstly. And secondly, it's responsibility to the country. This is a face-to-face job, personalized. There is a patient and you. Each patient has their own characteristics, each one has their own complications. A year has passed since the operation. The boy feels good. He will soon leave the hospital.
We have been observed in the hospital to this day. Nazar is now getting ready to leave hospital. Thank God everything is fine. When it is the last chance for life, children get it in such a way, and there is nothing terrible in this. I would like donors in Ukraine to come in, register and replenish the bank.
According to the Ministry of Health, every year about 5,000 Ukrainians need organ or tissue transplantation. Until recently, all those people had to wait several years until they could undergo surgery abroad, and this meant enormous sums of money. This year, Ukraine has increased funding for the organ transplantation program almost 5 times and expanded the list of medical institutions that can carry out such operations.
Many hospitals are joining the transplantation project. Organ transplantation sphere is developing, and we're expecting even a lung transplantation operation. That is, this is what should happen. Everyone's getting ready for this. This is a big step forward. This means the state's concern for people, for patients. Until now, many patients have traveled abroad. At least one does not have to leave Ukraine for kidney transplantation. All the necessary conditions have been created here.
Since January 2021, the Unified State Information System for Organ and Tissue Transplantation is working in Ukraine. It contains the entire database of donors and recipients. Without it, the systemic development of transplantation in Ukraine would be impossible. Reported by Vadim Kromer and Vlada Tsurkan, UATV News.
Compensation for the destroyed housing, more than $3.5 million, will be allocated this year from the state budget for payments to families whose houses were completely destroyed as a result of hostilities in Donbas. This applies only to housing located in the territory controlled by Ukraine. The program was launched at the end of 2020. Several dozen families have already received those payments. This is all that remains of our family home. It was a large, well-kept, comfortable house. Now there is nothing left. Everything is destroyed.
Alaki, resident of Avdiivka, unwillingly recalls the past events. During the shelling of the city in summer of 2014, her husband was killed.
On August 6, my husband was turning 54. We were together when in the morning the shelling started at about 11 o'clock. I was in the house and my husband went out into the street. We were already preparing to go to the basement, and when I came to my senses, there was no home at all, only the sky and dust.
Her son Alexander helped her survive the tragedy, the loss of her husband and family home. But soon, being unable to cope with the psychological stress, he fell ill.
I don't know, maybe it was easier for me because I screamed and cried, but my son hasn't cried at all. He kept everything inside, and in some 2 years, somewhere in 2016, he started walking with a limp.
The Kyiv family received a room in a hostel, but now they live in a rented 2-room apartment. There are better conditions for Alexandra, who moves in a wheelchair. At the end of last year, Alla learned about the state program of monetary compensation for the destroyed housing, and she became one of the first to receive payment, $10,500. Alla admits that now the main thing is to cure her son. Sasha dreams of recovering and rebuilding the family home. I can't be idle. I'm sick now, but I will definitely get over it. I will rebuild the house. 350 houses in Avdiivka were completely or partially destroyed as a result of hostilities. This year, local authorities are more actively recording the damage and arranging payments. The commission went to study the destroyed housing. We had 58 applications. We've made 55 inspections. 3 others were omitted because there was no permission from the Joint Forces Operation Headquarters to study those addresses. They are in the red zone now. The Minister of Reintegration reports that 74 families received compensation last year. This year, the program will be significantly expanded.
Compared to 2020, we have increased the budget of this program by more than 6 times. If in 2020 we had $718,000, in 2021 we have more than $4 million.
This year, the government plans to pay compensations to all the families whose homes were destroyed. There are 625 of them now. Besides, they plan to start working with those whose houses were damaged. Reported by Vadim Kramer, Yulia Krychkova, and Olena Hramova, UATV News.
That's all for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. More updates on our official website, YouTube, and Facebook pages.